The sun spilled gold and violet through the towering windows of the Virelli Academy cafeteria, casting prisms across the polished floors where aliens of every conceivable shape and hue chattered, slurped, and levitated trays of glowing food. Crystalline students tinkled like wind chimes with every movement, insectoid scholars clicked and scuttled, their multiple eyes reflecting neon menus, and gelatinous beings floated lazily, absorbing fragments of conversation through translucent membranes. And in the center of it all, a human sat, casually stretching a leg across the bench, elbows on a table, studying a jagged, bone-white snack like it was a gourmet delicacy. Around him, dozens of alien eyes widened. Antennae quivering, claws paused mid-air. The human bit down, chewed deliberately, and then, without a shred of hesitation, licked the residue from the bone. Silence rippled through the cafeteria like a shockwave. He didn't speak. He didn't flinch. He simply smirked. The aliens whispered, gestured, even floated closer, trying to comprehend the audacity, the defiance, the calm certainty that radiated from every line of his body. This was the human way. Where others saw fragility, they found strategy. Where others recoiled, they observed, and the human thrived on it. For centuries, humanity had been underestimated, studied, mocked, and confined to the edge of interstellar maps. Yet here, in the heart of a civilization far older and stranger than any they had ever encountered, they moved as if they owned the room, not with conquest, but with sheer presence. A gelatinous student floated near, whispering a string of tones that no translator could fully capture. The human glanced at it, cocked an eyebrow, and mimicked the sound back, perfectly, irreverently, with a grin that made the creature quiver in awe and alarm. Around them, whispers spread, and laughter, hesitant, confused, disbelieving, began to ripple through the cafeteria. Humans were clever, unpredictable, impossible to categorize, and then, as if on cue, a small group of alien instructors strode in, tall, elegant, adorned in robes that shimmered like liquid metal. Their eyes scanned the cafeteria and settled on the human, who now leaned back, feet on the table, still licking the bone clean. The room froze. Even the floating trays seemed to hesitate in midair. One instructor's voice cut through the hum, calm but sharp. "What do you think you're doing?" The human smiled faintly, showing a flash of teeth, and replied, not with words, but with action. He snapped the bone in half, tossed one fragment onto the instructor's polished desk, and shrugged. A casual gesture, but it carried all the weight of centuries of survival, pride, and defiance. Every alien in the room understood the message instantly. Humans played by no rules, respected no boundaries, and yet, somehow, commanded respect in every quiet, audacious act. Outside the cafeteria windows, the city stretched into a horizon of shimmering towers and floating platforms. Ships streaked between the spires in colored trails of ionized light, a kaleidoscope of movement and sound. Within the human's gaze was a spark of recognition. Every corner of this galaxy, every empire, every student, every instructor, was a puzzle. And humans were experts at solving puzzles by bending them until the rules themselves begged for mercy. A faint pulse seemed to echo from his chest, subtle but noticeable. It was the heartbeat of a species that had survived annihilation, exile, and contempt, a species that would not bow, would not flee, and would not surrender. The cafeteria slowly resumed its noise, the whispers growing into cautious laughter, the alien students watching him with a mixture of fear, fascination, and curiosity. Humanity had arrived, not with guns or fleets, but with a single, defiant act in a room full of the galaxy's most accomplished civilizations. And for the first time, the alien instructors understood, the humans were not just a species to teach, to control, or to study. They were a force, unpredictable, clever, and utterly untamed. The hum of the academy corridors carried a tension that no alien had expected. Students moved in measured paths, levitating trays and holographic data tablets, but their eyes kept darting toward the human. Some whispered, some gawked openly, but none dared approach too closely, and yet, none could ignore him. The human strolled through the halls with the easy confidence of someone who had seen worlds crumble and rebuild themselves in a heartbeat. Every footstep echoed a rhythm older than the academy itself, the pulse of survival, ingenuity, and defiance. A group of crystalline Trelkar scholars hovered near a wall, murmuring in harmonic tones. The human glanced at them and mimicked the intricate resonance with a flick of his tongue and a subtle click of his teeth. The Trelkar froze, their crystalline bodies vibrating in astonishment. In the classrooms above, alien instructors lectured on quantum ethics, galactic law, and the philosophy of interspecies diplomacy. Holographic displays floated in midair, pulsing with neon blues and vibrant violets. The human entered one such lecture unannounced, hands in pockets, posture casual. His presence bent the air, drawing the gaze of every student, and every instructor, like gravity, a holographic model of a black hole twisted in the center of the room. The instructor, a tall, elegant being with iridescent wings, paused mid-gesture. "Your presence disrupts the flow of learning," they said in a voice smooth as liquid crystal. The human shrugged, reaching over to tap a floating data panel. Instantly, the model began to shift, spinning in ways the program had not been designed to accommodate. Colors morphed into patterns, impossible and chaotic, yet beautiful. Gasps spread through the room. Even the most advanced alien students leaned forward, fascinated despite themselves. "You can't just." The instructor began, but the human interrupted with a smile. Not a boastful one, not cruel, but calm, sharp, and utterly certain. "A message without words. I see the rules, and I bend them." By the time he left the classroom, whispers had transformed into chatter, chatter into stories. Students spoke of the human who ate bones clean in the cafeteria, who could mimic the Trelkar resonance perfectly, who could manipulate holographic models with nothing but a touch. Outside, in the sprawling gardens of the academy, he sat beneath a canopy of floating bioluminescent flora, observing the alien city beyond. Ships glided between towers, their hulls reflecting the sunset in shades of amber and magenta. He could have left, vanished into the stars as easily as he had arrived. Yet he stayed, not for study, not for conquest, but to teach the galaxy a lesson it had forgotten. That lesson was simple, yet dangerous. Humans do not obey expectation. They do not fear consequence. They survive, they adapt, and when necessary, they reshape everything around them to suit their vision of life. A young insectoid student approached, trembling slightly, offering a floating orb of nutrient paste. The human took it, examined it, and nodded with approval. He spoke not a word, but the gesture said it all. Respect is earned, not demanded. "And I am watching." From the highest tower of the academy, the alien instructors convened, their conversation vibrating through layers of telepathic resonance. "He is extraordinary," one admitted. "But we must observe closely. He bends more than rules, he bends understanding itself." And somewhere in the hum of neon lights, the pulse of a human heartbeat echoed faintly. A small, simple rhythm that carried with it centuries of survival, cunning, and defiance. A rhythm that no alien, no matter how brilliant, could hope to predict. The galaxy was quiet now, but the storm had already begun. The following day, the academy was alive in ways it had never been before. Alien students scurried along elevated walkways, their voices carrying in a symphony of tones, clicks, and vibrations. Holographic advertisements shimmered in the air, displaying news, interstellar markets, and cultural simulations. And at the center of it all, the human moved like a ripple through the established order. He had claimed a small corner of the grand dining hall, a table of cracked marble, glowing lightly beneath a floating array of fruit and nutrient cubes. Around him, alien students dared not sit, yet they could not stop watching. One by one, creatures of crystalline facets, gelatinous forms, and multi-limbed scholars edged closer, drawn by a mix of curiosity and fear. The human picked up a neon blue loaf, held it to his lips, and bit. As the crumbs fell, tiny motes of light danced through the air, reflecting off metallic and crystalline surfaces. A nearby instructor's jaw, or the equivalent of it, dropped. A Trelkar student whispered something in harmonic tones, and the human mimicked it perfectly, then added a subtle flourish, turning a simple greeting into a performance that made even the most rigid observers lean forward. By lunchtime, the human had become more than a presence, he was a phenomenon. Alien students attempted to replicate his actions, unsure if it was cleverness or madness. He guided them silently, a nod here, a subtle gesture there. Small acts of defiance, perfectly calibrated, teaching the aliens to bend rules without breaking them, to observe without fear, to act without permission. Outside, the city pulsed with color and motion. Anti-gravity trams streaked through towers of amber glass, neon ribbons stretching across platforms and bridges. From above, the human paused on a balcony, watching. He could have left for the stars, for adventure, for freedom. But he stayed, because every glance, every interaction, every whispered observation in the academy was a seed. A small squad of insectoid students approached him, hands trembling, eyes wide. Human. We wish to learn, they said, or the closest equivalent. He looked at them, calm, amused, yet calculating. He extended his hand, not to shake, not to touch, but to guide. Instantly, the students straightened, understanding without words the lesson he offered. Confidence, audacity, and cunning are more powerful than fleets or force. From the cafeteria, a ripple of laughter echoed. The human had taught a crystalline student to mimic the sound of floating trays colliding in the air, a small prank that sent clusters of jelly-like students bouncing in shock. Even the instructors, who prided themselves on centuries of discipline and knowledge, could only observe and shake their heads. Humans were untamable, not because of strength or weaponry, but because of unpredictability, wit, and sheer nerve. As night fell, the city below shimmered in neon and starlight, reflecting across the human's visor. He paused, looking at the horizon where distant ships traced arcs of energy across the sky. Somewhere, beyond the academy, beyond the towers, beyond even the bustling alien metropolis, the galaxy waited. It was vast, indifferent, and full of rules. And humans? Humans had a way of bending every one of them without breaking a sweat. A soft pulse rose from his chest, subtle, steady, undeniable. The heartbeat of a species that had survived famine, war, exile, and oblivion. The heartbeat of those who could take a single bone in an alien cafeteria and turn it into a lesson the galaxy would never forget. In the shadows of the towers, alien instructors convened quietly, exchanging glances and murmurs. He is dangerous, one said. Not because he fights, but because he teaches, another agreed. And somewhere in that quiet, the first seeds of fascination, and fear, took root. Humans had arrived. And they were only beginning to leave their mark. Morning light poured through the towering glass spires of the Academy City, scattering prisms of color across streets, gardens, and floating platforms. The human walked among alien students, hands tucked casually into his armor pockets, eyes observing every gesture, every pattern, every flicker of curiosity and fear. It was no longer just cafeteria antics or classroom pranks. Small rebellions of orderless genius were beginning to ripple through the academy. Holographic schedules were subtly rearranged. Gravity fields and training chambers warped at the edges, creating unpredictable but thrilling courses. Alien instructors found lessons altered mid-session, questions appearing where none had been asked, yet answered flawlessly by those who dared to watch the human. In the academy library, a cluster of multi-limbed scholars worked in silence, attempting to map the human's behavior. Every motion, every glance, every casual interaction seemed deliberate, yet impossible to predict. The human leaned against a towering data console, flipping through a floating archive with a casual flick of his wrist, absorbing centuries of alien strategy, law, and philosophy in minutes. He didn't memorize, he understood. Outside, the gardens thrummed with color and light. Bioluminescent flora pulsed gently, responding to the human's presence as if acknowledging him as a part of the ecosystem rather than an outsider. Alien students approached, carrying experimental devices, samples of exotic compounds, or fragments of technology. He touched. adjusted, and improved them in subtle ways, leaving behind small sparks of innovation and wonder. A crystalline instructor approached, wings shimmering with metallic light. "You manipulate more than objects," they said, voice resonant and deliberate. "You manipulate perception itself." The human tilted his head, eyes glinting behind amber visor glass. A shrug, a smirk, a quiet acknowledgement. Exactly. As the day progressed, word spread beyond the academy walls. Aliens whispered tales of the human who could bend lessons, prank classes, and rearrange schedules without overt confrontation. They spoke of how he could eat alien bones in the cafeteria with such composure it felt like an art form. Mimic resonances no translator could capture, and silently teach humility to even the most disciplined minds. The human paused at the edge of the gardens, overlooking the city's spaceport. Ships of every design glided between towers and docking stations, a colorful ballet of light and metal. Somewhere beyond the city, fleets waited, systems waited, a galaxy waited, unaware that humanity, in its subtle and quiet audacity, was beginning to reassert itself not with force, but with the impossible combination of intellect, humor, and sheer defiance. An insectoid student approached, hands trembling, holding a device that had puzzled its designers for decades. The human tilted it, tapped a sequence. And the machine whirred to life flawlessly. The student's multiple eyes widened, antennae twitching in awe. Around them, other students watched, learning, absorbing, reshaping their expectations of what a human could accomplish. Above, in the observation towers, the alien instructors convened once more. Their whispers had turned to speculation, then anxiety. "If he is allowed this freedom, the academy, our society, may never return to order," one said. "And yet," another replied, "perhaps we have underestimated what order truly means." The human, oblivious to the conversation above, leaned back against the marble railing, watching the sun set behind the floating platforms. Light refracted across the city like liquid fire, casting long shadows, painting the world in colors the galaxy rarely noticed. He smiled faintly, thinking of the quiet chaos he had sown, not with malice, not with aggression, but with calm, clever defiance. Every student he touched, every device he altered, every rule he bent or broke, it was all a small pulse in a larger rhythm. Humanity had arrived, subtle yet unstoppable, leaving traces of audacity wherever it moved. And as the stars began to glitter in the sky beyond the city, the first whispers of cosmic awareness stirred in those who watched humanity quietly rewrite expectation itself. The city was awake in a riot of color. Neon ribbons stretched between towers, reflecting off glass spires, and ships zipped in arcs of blue, orange, and violet across the sky. The academy hummed with activity, but the human's presence had turned that hum into a symphony of uncertainty. Students whispered in corridors, instructors muttered behind hands, wings, or antennae. Everyone watched, calculated, feared, and admired. Today, the human did not sit idly. He moved with purpose through training chambers, experimental labs, and lecture halls, touching systems, devices, and lessons alike. Each step left a ripple, schedules reworked, gravity fields warped, holographic simulations twisted in ways impossible for any alien mind to predict. Students who had once relied on strict guidance now began to improvise, copying his gestures, his calm audacity, his refusal to fear consequence. A group of alien cadets followed him to the observatory, where a massive holographic map of interstellar trade routes pulsed and shifted. The human extended a hand, and suddenly routes reorganized themselves, prioritizing efficiency, balance, and fairness in ways the coders had never imagined. Eyes widened across the room. The human wasn't just clever, he was rewriting the rules of logic itself. Outside, the city's spaceport erupted in motion. A fleet of sleek alien ships prepared for departure, their engines glowing in soft neon. Orders streamed across consoles. Yet human eyes scanned every detail. A single tap here, a subtle twist there, and schedules adjusted, crew rotations improved, fuel optimized. Chaos became harmony. Discipline became flexibility. Humans weren't leaders by decree, They were leaders because their intelligence made reality bend around them. In the cafeteria, a group of alien students had organized a makeshift game of skill and strategy, inspired by human improvisation. The human sat among them, observing, offering subtle corrections. He picked up a floating snack, twirled it in his fingers, and tossed it with perfect precision into a moving target, causing cheers, gasps, and an accidental knockover of a hovering tray. The cafeteria erupted, part laughter, part chaos, all fascination. From the towers above, instructors convened urgently. "He alters more than our academy," one said, wings glinting with frustration. "He changes perception, he changes patterns. He could influence the entire sector if left unchecked." And he would. The humans strolled to the city edge, looking down at the rivers of light and energy coursing between spires and platforms. Somewhere beyond, fleets waited, alien bureaucracies operated, empires calculated, all oblivious to the subtle yet unstoppable changes a single species could create. He paused, hand resting on a railing, eyes reflecting the kaleidoscope of the city. A small insectoid student approached, clutching a misfiring device. The human adjusted it in seconds, not breaking it, not controlling it, just letting it work perfectly within new parameters, teaching the alien mind to see possibility instead of limitation. Around him, other students began to imitate, to innovate, to grow in ways the academy had never expected. Even in his calm, measured steps, the galaxy began to notice. The pulse of human audacity had reached beyond the cafeteria, the classroom, the gardens, into systems, cities, and fleets. And somewhere, distant instructors and leaders of alien civilizations exchanged worried glances. "This species. They are dangerous," one whispered. "Not because they fight," another agreed, "but because they think. And they do so unpredictably." The sun dipped below the floating towers, scattering light across the city in fiery streaks. Shadows lengthened, but the pulse of human ingenuity did not fade. Every glance, every subtle movement, every quiet act of defiance was a signal. Humans were no longer observers. They were catalysts. They were change incarnate, and the galaxy had yet to learn what that truly meant. And far above, where stars stretched across the horizon like molten jewels, the heartbeat of humanity echoed quietly, steadily, a rhythm that promised both wonder and chaos. The Academy city glittered beneath twin suns. A kaleidoscope of neon, glass, and bioluminescent flora. The humans strode through the central plaza, calm and unhurried, yet every step sent ripples through the crowd. Students, instructors, and even visiting officials watched in awe, anticipation, and unease. Nothing in the galaxy had ever seen such effortless command, not through force, not through decree, but through presence and audacity. The massive alert echoed across the Academy's systems, an incoming fleet, unexpected, sleek, and hostile, piercing the sector with calculated precision. Alien instructors panicked. Their protocols, simulations, and contingencies blazed across holoscreens, yet no algorithm could account for the human. He paused, observing the approaching ships with a tilted head, amber visor reflecting streaks of light. No fear. No hesitation. Just the quiet certainty that humans could bend the impossible. The fleet arrived, surrounding the city in elegant, lethal arcs. Alien defenses activated, pulses of energy weaving a protective lattice across towers and walkways. Students ducked behind columns, instructors commanded their teams with frantic gestures, yet the human simply walked to the plaza's edge, lifted a small fragment of alien bone from the ground, and twirled it between his fingers. The ships hesitated. They scanned. They calculated. And in that brief moment, the human's pulse, quiet, steady, defiant, reached beyond instinct. A single gesture, a flick of bone and wrist, and the city's defense systems reconfigured themselves, turning potential destruction into a display of chaotic precision. Alien energy pulses scattered across the sky, arcs of neon intersecting like a controlled storm, perfectly unpredictable, guided not by code but by human intuition. students emerged, encouraged by his calm example, and began to improvise alongside him, mimicking his gestures, altering systems, predicting attacks in ways instructors had deemed impossible. The fleet faltered, miscalculating human ingenuity, misjudging improvisation as chaos. A Trelkar scholar floated forward, tentacles trembling. How? How does one human do this? They whispered, more to themselves than to anyone else. The human smiled faintly. Not proud. Not cruel. Simply aware. He had survived worlds, crises, and the contempt of empires. He had learned that power came not from fear, but from imagination, audacity, and the refusal to be constrained by expectation. By the time the last ship retreated into the stars, the city had not only survived but thrived. Students cheered. Instructors, stunned, recalibrated their understanding of order and control. And in the plaza, the humans stood quietly, surveying the aftermath. The galaxy had begun to understand something fundamental. Humans were not just another species. They were catalysts. They were clever. They were bold. And they were utterly untamable. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting amber and violet light across the city, and the human walked away, leaving behind a legacy of awe, chaos, and inspiration. Students would tell stories. Instructors would write reports. Fleets would remember the rhythm of a species that refused to bow. Everywhere the human passed, subtle changes remained, a device tweaked, a lesson altered, a rule gently bent, seeds of ingenuity and defiance that would echo across generations. The galaxy was quieter now, but it had learned something it would never forget. Unpredictability, intelligence, and courage could shift worlds. And as stars began to shimmer over the floating towers, the pulse of humanity, steady, calm, unstoppable, resonated across the cosmos, and so, the galaxy learned to respect the audacity of a human laugh.